I'm Albert Tanner, 44 years old, founder and CEO of Tanner Technologies. Over the past 15 years, I have dedicated myself to building this company from a modest startup into a recognized player in the software development industry, with a current valuation exceeding $25 million. My reputation in the tech community is built on precision, transparency, and a methodical approach to both product development and financial management. I've always believed that clear documentation and meticulous record-keeping are the cornerstones of lasting success, not only in business, but in all professional dealings. On the day of the hearing, I walked into the courtroom fully aware that this was more than just a divorce proceeding. It was a high-stakes contest, over years of hard-earned professional and personal assets. Monica, my wife, was represented by a seasoned lawyer and had made a dramatic demand, $5 million from our shared assets and ownership of the family ranch. The room buzzed with tension as her lawyer laid out her claim, portraying her as a co-creator of the business empire I had built. The judge, attorneys, and observers exchanged glances, sensing the magnitude of the dispute. Despite the shock that rippled through the courtroom, I maintained my composure. Years of managing complex negotiations had trained me to stay calm and focused under pressure. When it was my turn to respond, I simply said, "Understood," acknowledging the claim without displaying an ounce of defensiveness or anger. My goal was never to get caught up in emotional reactions, but to rely on facts and documented evidence to make my case. That's when I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a small, nondescript folder. Nothing flashy, just a plain manila folder with a few pages inside. It might have appeared insignificant to anyone unfamiliar with its contents, but this folder was the silent linchpin of my defense. Inside were critical documents, signed premarital agreements, financial ledgers, equity vesting schedules, and most importantly, contracts bearing 3 notarized initials, proof of Monica's explicit acknowledgement and consent to the terms protecting my assets. When I handed over the folder to the court clerk, the atmosphere shifted palpably. The room went silent. The murmurs stopped, and all eyes turned toward the documents resting on the judge's bench. I could see the subtle surprise on the faces of Monica's legal team. They had clearly not anticipated such comprehensive and well-organized evidence. Those 3 initials, seemingly minor, represented a legally binding commitment that she had forgotten or chosen to ignore in her aggressive claims. As I stood there, I reflected on how this moment was the result of years of strategic foresight. From the very beginning of our marriage, I insisted on clear boundaries and documented agreements to separate personal and professional finances. I had taken the extra step to ensure that our premarital contract was thoroughly reviewed, notarized, and securely stored. It was never about mistrust, but about safeguarding the company and the family assets against unforeseen future conflicts. Now those carefully maintained records were doing their job. They transformed what could have been a chaotic emotional confrontation into a precise legal matter governed by facts and contract law. The courtroom's silence wasn't just about the documents themselves, but about the power of preparation and professional diligence. My role as a CEO had always extended beyond managing technology and people. It included managing risk, legal obligations, and long-term financial security. In that moment, I understood that the real battle wasn't in the loud claims or dramatic courtroom speeches. It was in the quiet, methodical documentation laid out in that folder. This was the foundation upon which I would build my defense. And while Monica's lawyer was still formulating her next argument, I was already several steps ahead, confident that the strength of these documents would speak louder than any claim she could make. As the judge began to examine the folder, I remained calm and collected, focusing on the process rather than the emotion. My years of experience in software development had taught me the value of systematic thinking and precision, and I applied that same mindset to this legal challenge. The situation was tense, yes, but I was prepared. I knew that in professional conflicts, especially those blending personal and business realms, success depends on preparation, calm execution, and an unshakable reliance on documented truth. This folder was more than just paper. It was the embodiment of years of foresight, strategic planning, and unwavering commitment to protecting my professional and personal legacy. And as the courtroom awaited the next move, I was ready to demonstrate that in this case, Quiet competence and meticulous record-keeping would prevail over loud, unfounded demands. Over the past 15 years, I transformed Tanner Technologies from a modest startup into a vibrant company valued at over $25 million. This wasn't accidental or the result of luck. It was the product of disciplined, hands-on leadership combined with a clear, data-driven vision. From day one, I immersed myself not only in the technological aspects of our proprietary software, but also in the financial and operational mechanics that sustain long-term growth. Our flagship software product alone generates nearly $4 million in annual revenue, a testament to sustained market demand and focused product development. Managing Tanner Technologies required more than technical expertise. It demanded rigorous financial oversight and strategic equity management. I personally handled the equity distribution framework, ensuring that each share allocation reflected actual contribution and long-term company health. This meant setting vesting schedules that incentivized performance and loyalty, but also protected the company's core ownership from dilution. Every equity transaction was documented, time-stamped, and cross-checked against our internal ledgers, which I maintained with painstaking detail. This level of precision was non-negotiable. Any ambiguity could jeopardize investor confidence and company valuation. Profit reinvestment was another critical area under my direct supervision. Instead of rushing to extract personal gain, I prioritized reinvesting earnings into research and development, infrastructure upgrades, and talent acquisition. These decisions were always backed by thorough financial modeling and risk assessment. The ledger reflected every dollar moved, every expense justified, and every ROI projection updated to account for real-world performance. This transparent financial management not only sustained Tanner Technologies' growth, but also reinforced my reputation as a leader who respected accountability and clarity. From a contractual standpoint, I understood early on that protecting Tanner Technologies meant more than just internal diligence. It required explicit legal safeguards. Before Monica and I married, I insisted on a premarital agreement designed to protect the company's assets from any future personal disputes. This wasn't a show of mistrust, but a practical measure to ensure that the business and personal lives remained appropriately distinct. The agreement outlined clear clauses regarding asset ownership, equity rights, and spousal claims, and it was reviewed by multiple legal professionals before both Monica and I signed, each page initialed, with notarized witnesses confirming its validity. Moreover, I maintained a separate set of financial accounts for company-related income and personal expenses. This segregation was deliberate and documented, creating an unambiguous paper trail that distinguished my professional earnings from any marital assets. It was a precautionary step I took seriously, knowing that the blurred lines between marital and business finances often become battlegrounds in divorce proceedings. These accounts were reconciled monthly, with statements securely archived both digitally and physically. The combination of careful financial management, clear legal frameworks, and systematic documentation became the backbone of Tanner Technologies' resilience. It was a professional philosophy I applied not only to the company's operations, but also to my personal dealings. Even in the context of marriage, I maintained this disciplined approach, understanding that strategic preparation and transparency are essential to mitigating risk in all areas of life. When Monica later challenged my claims in court, demanding $8.5 million plus the family ranch, I was able to rely on this meticulously maintained infrastructure of evidence. My prior investments in record-keeping and contractual clarity provided more than just legal defense. They offered a narrative of responsible stewardship and foresight. It is this foundation that allowed me to stay composed and confident during a stressful and complex dispute. In essence, Tanner Technologies' success was inseparable from the control I exercised over its financial and legal architecture. The company's valuation, revenue streams, equity structure, and protective agreements all reflected years of intentional and systematic effort. This depth of preparation was a critical asset when faced with personal challenges that threatened my professional legacy. It underscored the reality that in high-stakes environments, professionalism isn't just about what you build, it's about how you protect it. Monica Tanner entered my life with a polished resume and a background in marketing consulting that seemed to complement my technical expertise perfectly. On the surface, our marriage was portrayed as a business partnership, two professionals uniting not only personally, but professionally, building an empire together. Early on, Monica positioned herself as a strategic partner, implying involvement beyond the typical spouse role. She frequently emphasized how her marketing insights would be integral to Tanner Technologies' growth. However, this was more a narrative she crafted than a reality I experienced in day-to-day operations. In truth, Monica had limited participation in the company's management or operational decisions. While she occasionally provided input on branding ideas, she was neither involved in product development, client negotiations, nor financial planning. I managed all core aspects, from coding and technical innovation to investor relations and equity structuring. Her marketing contributions, when they occurred, were sporadic and informal, lacking any formal documentation or measurable impact on company performance. Unlike the rigorous financial ledgers and project plans I maintained, there was no marketing budget she oversaw, no campaigns she spearheaded, and no contractual role defining her involvement. This absence of documented business contribution would become a crucial element in the legal dispute. What complicated matters was Monica's sense of entitlement, fueled by the initial implication that she was a co-founder or business partner. Over time, she increasingly asserted that she built the empire alongside me, a claim she repeated with conviction during depositions and court proceedings. Her attorney presented her as an indispensable force behind the company's success, demanding an $8.5 million share plus ownership of the family ranch. This aggressive posture was designed to sway the court emotionally and paint her as the victim of an unequal partnership. However, Monica overlooked a critical safeguard: the premarital agreement she signed prior to our wedding. This contract was comprehensive, explicitly delineating asset ownership and clarifying that Tanner Technologies, including its equity and related properties, remained my separate property. The clauses were not vague, they were legally binding and notarized, with each page initialed by both of us in the presence of witnesses. The agreement also included spousal claims waivers on specified assets, effectively preempting any future disputes like the one unfolding. Moreover, Monica never challenged or contested these documents until the divorce proceedings began. This silence, combined with her failure to question or request amendments to the contract at the time, undermined her current claims significantly. It was clear that she either underestimated the enforceability of the premarital agreement or assumed that her courtroom tactics could override its terms by appealing to sympathy or perceived contribution. Beyond the contract, Monica's legal team failed to account for email correspondences and internal communications where she acknowledged her lack of direct ownership or involvement. I had preserved these digital records meticulously, and they provided further evidence that her claims were unfounded. Messages exchanged during company meetings and strategy sessions demonstrated that Monica understood her role was limited and that she deferred operational control to me and the executive team. Her narrative of building the empire was thus contradicted by both contractual evidence and day-to-day business reality. She had never been issued company shares, nor had she contributed capital or services that would translate into equity. The equity vesting schedules and shareholder registers, all carefully documented and notarized, showed no record of her as a partner or shareholder. This disconnect between Monica's courtroom assertions and the documented facts would soon become the cornerstone of my defense. The premarital agreement and the associated financial documentation, bearing those crucial notarized initials she seemed to forget, formed an airtight professional boundary. The legal provisions she had willingly signed before marriage were designed exactly for this scenario, protecting the company's assets from spousal claims and maintaining clear separations between personal and business finances. In retrospect, Monica's approach was a critical oversight. By focusing on emotional appeals and ignoring the binding contractual protections, she underestimated the strength of legal planning and documentation. Her ambitions were not matched by the professional diligence that I had applied to securing and preserving the company's financial and legal architecture. As the courtroom drama unfolded, it became apparent that her legal strategy lacked foundation. The implied business partnership she claimed was a shadow, unsupported by any formal documentation or operational reality. The premarital agreement and the detailed records inside my folder illuminated the truth. The company and ranch were my separate property, shielded by explicit contract terms and sustained by years of methodical management. This misalignment between Monica's claims and the documented facts underscored the vital importance of clear contractual definitions and financial transparency in any professional and personal partnership. Her failure to grasp or respect these principles paved the way for her case's unraveling, a process my legal team and I were poised to execute with precision. As I began a thorough review of the court filings and financial disclosures submitted by Monica's legal team, I quickly noticed troubling discrepancies. Their documentation was incomplete and, more importantly, appeared to omit critical pieces of evidence that directly contradicted their claims. Knowing the stakes, I engaged a forensic accountant to assist me in combing through every detail. Together, we uncovered a trove of email correspondences between Monica and members of my executive team, messages she hadn't disclosed, that clearly acknowledged her lack of equity ownership and any direct involvement in the company's financial decisions. One particular email chain stood out. Monica, in a candid message to our CFO, explicitly stated, "I have no direct ownership in Tanner Technologies and understand the equity is entirely Albert's." This email was sent months before the divorce proceedings began, yet it was conspicuously absent from the disclosures her attorneys presented. This omission wasn't just a minor oversight. It suggested a deliberate effort to conceal evidence that could weaken her case. Simultaneously, I cross-referenced these emails with the premarital agreement contained within my folder. The agreement was comprehensive, detailing the separation of assets and affirming that Tanner Technologies, along with its equity and associated real estate, would remain my sole property. Each page bore Monica's initials, notarized and witnessed, underscoring her explicit consent to these terms before we were married. This contractual safeguard was not a vague promise, but a legally binding document designed specifically to prevent disputes like this one. Beyond the contract, my financial records painted a consistent picture. I maintained separate bank accounts for business income and personal expenses, with monthly reconciliations and detailed ledgers tracking every transaction. These records demonstrated that Monica's financial footprint within the company was non-existent. No capital contributions, no payroll records, no expense approvals, nothing tied her financially to Tanner Technologies. I meticulously reviewed equity vesting schedules and shareholder registers, which were notarized and time-stamped to prevent tampering. There was no record of Monica ever receiving or holding company shares. The schedules showed allocations to employees and investors, but made no mention of her involvement. This absence was telling. In a legitimate business partnership, ownership stakes are clearly documented and cannot be retroactively fabricated. I also examined real estate records for the family ranch, which Monica demanded in the settlement. Deeds and title documents confirmed the property was under my name alone, purchased years before our marriage, using funds traceable through bank statements and legal purchase agreements. The premarital contract explicitly excluded the ranch from any spousal claims, reinforcing its status as my separate asset. With each document scrutinized and cross-verified, it became clear that Monica's claim to $8.5 million plus the ranch had no legal foundation. Her assertion that she built the empire was contradicted by both contractual agreements and unequivocal financial evidence. The carefully maintained folder of documents was not only a shield, but a blueprint revealing the truth about ownership and asset division. I approached this discovery without emotion, recognizing that any personal feelings could cloud professional judgment. Instead, I focused on the legal leverage these documents provided. The concealed emails, the notarized premarital agreement, the meticulous financial statements, all combined to form a robust defense strategy. They exposed the gaps and omissions in Monica's claims and provided clear evidence for the court to enforce the contractual protections I had established long ago. This phase of evidence review solidified my confidence in the path ahead. The inconsistencies in Monica's filings and the weight of my documentation created a significant imbalance that would inevitably shift the court's perspective. Rather than reacting to aggressive demands or courtroom theatrics, I relied on the objective facts preserved in that quiet folder, facts that told a compelling story of professional diligence, legal foresight, and rightful ownership. As my legal team and I prepared to present this evidence, I understood the importance of maintaining precision in our argumentation. Every detail mattered, from the dates on emails to the presence of notarized initials. These elements would not merely challenge Monica's assertions, they would dismantle them systematically, piece by piece. In this moment, the battle was no longer about who could speak louder or sway opinion through emotion. It was about who could present incontrovertible proof rooted in documented truth, and that proof lay quietly in my hands, ready to redefine the narrative and protect the professional legacy I had worked so hard to build. After thoroughly reviewing the files and evidence I had gathered, it was clear that navigating this dispute required specialized legal expertise. I retained Ethan Caldwell, a divorce attorney renowned for handling high-net-worth cases with complex asset structures. Ethan's reputation for meticulous case preparation and strategic courtroom presence aligned perfectly with what this situation demanded. From our initial consultation, it was evident that his approach complemented my own methodical mindset: analyze every document, identify leverage points, and prepare to counter every potential claim with indisputable facts. Working closely with Ethan, our first order of business was to organize all evidence in a coherent, chronological structure. We knew that presenting a tangled pile of documents would only give Monica's team room to sow doubt or confusion. Instead, we developed a timeline that traced the company's financial milestones, equity distributions, and key contractual agreements, from the premarital contract signed years ago to the latest bank reconciliations. This timeline wasn't just a summary, it was a strategic narrative demonstrating the evolution of asset ownership and financial control. To build this timeline, we cross-referenced multiple sources: notarized agreements, internal emails, shareholder ledgers, and bank statements. Every document was scrutinized for consistency and authenticity. For example, we confirmed that all equity vesting schedules bore original signatures and reflected the company's official shareholder registry. We even digitized these records with secure timestamps to prevent any future tampering claims. Ethan's team employed forensic accountants to verify that all financial data aligned perfectly with the narratives in the documents. We also cataloged emails where Monica explicitly acknowledged her lack of ownership or operational control, making sure these communications were easy for the court to access and interpret. These emails played a critical role in undermining her assertion of co-creation and entitlement. By indexing each correspondence, we could respond swiftly to any attempt by her lawyers to dismiss or ignore these facts. Parallel to organizing evidence, Ethan and I reviewed the premarital agreement's clauses line by line. The contract was comprehensive, delineating asset separation, equity rights, and spousal claims with precise legal language. We identified several enforceable provisions that directly protected the company's equity and the ranch as separate property. The notarized initials on every page, alongside signatures witnessed by legal professionals, gave these clauses unassailable legitimacy. This contract wasn't just paperwork, it was a contractual fortress designed to withstand exactly this kind of attack. Recognizing the importance of security, we created multiple backups of all files, stored in encrypted formats across separate locations. I insisted on this redundancy, knowing that losing or corrupting even a single document could jeopardize the entire defense. Ethan's office had protocols for secure data management, including controlled access and audit trails, which assured me that the information was in reliable hands. We then prepared statements and affidavits from key witnesses, our CFO, lead accountant, and business attorneys, who could attest to the financial arrangements and Monica's non-involvement. These testimonies were crafted carefully to support the documentary evidence without veering into emotional territory. The goal was to maintain a strictly professional tone that emphasized facts over feelings. Simultaneously, Ethan assessed Monica's legal filings to anticipate her arguments and identify weaknesses. We mapped out potential counter-arguments for each claim she made, focusing particularly on her demands for $8.5 million and the ranch. Understanding that settlement discussions might arise, we developed clear terms that favored preserving my ownership rights while minimizing unnecessary litigation risks. Throughout this process, I maintained professional composure, dedicating time to review each detail with Ethan and his team. Our collaboration was characterized by strategic patience and thoroughness. We did not rush, knowing that a solid foundation would strengthen our position in court and during negotiations. Every action was deliberate, organizing evidence, preparing legal memos, securing witness cooperation, all aimed at systematically dismantling Monica's inflated claims. This phase of strategic planning was critical. With the evidence chronologically organized and legal leverage points identified, we were positioned not only to defend, but to assert control over the narrative. The folder I had presented in court was now expanded into a comprehensive portfolio, underscoring my financial independence and the enforceability of pre-existing agreements. As we finalized our preparations, I felt a growing confidence, not from arrogance, but from the clarity and integrity of the documentation supporting my position. The path ahead would require continued discipline, but with Ethan's expertise and the strength of our compiled evidence, I was ready to engage the next stages of this legal challenge with calm professionalism and unshakable resolve. Ethan Caldwell's arrival marked a turning point in the unfolding legal battle. With his extensive experience in high-net-worth divorce cases, he immediately recognized the value and complexity of the documentation I had assembled. Our first task was to dissect the premarital agreement with laser focus, identifying every clause that could reinforce my claim and invalidate Monica's assertions. Ethan's meticulous approach was exactly what this situation demanded. He took the contract, already bearing Monica's notarized initials on every page, and scrutinized it line by line, ensuring no detail went unnoticed. One of the most critical findings centered on the enforceable clauses that explicitly protected my ownership of Tanner Technologies and the family ranch. The agreement unambiguously stated that all equity, assets, and real estate held prior to the marriage remained my separate property, not subject to spousal claims or division in the event of divorce. These provisions were drafted with precise legal language, carefully designed to withstand challenges, and had been reviewed and notarized by independent legal counsel before Monica and I signed. Ethan was quick to note that the combination of notarization, witness signatures, and clear initials sealed the agreement's binding status in court. Alongside the premarital agreement, we compiled the supporting evidence that would bolster the enforceability of those provisions. This included detailed financial statements I had maintained over the years, monthly ledgers documenting all company income, reinvestments, and distributions. Each entry was cross-referenced with bank statements from accounts held solely in my name or the company's, distinctly separate from any joint marital finances. These records demonstrated that Monica neither contributed capital nor had access to these funds, effectively dismantling any claim of joint ownership. Another vital piece was the equity vesting schedule. This document meticulously mapped out every shareholder's stake in Tanner Technologies, including timestamps on share allocations and vesting milestones. Notably absent was Monica's name, a fact Ethan emphasized in our preparation. The schedules were notarized and signed by company officers, further reinforcing their authenticity and relevance. This evidence directly contradicted the narrative Monica's counsel tried to paint, that she was a co-founder or shareholder entitled to a substantial portion of the company's value. We also gathered email correspondences that had previously been overlooked by her legal team, messages where Monica herself acknowledged her lack of equity and operational involvement. One email to the CFO candidly stated she understood the equity was entirely mine. Ethan flagged this as a powerful admission, one that could severely undermine her credibility if presented effectively in court. To ensure nothing was left to chance, we compiled a comprehensive exhibit packet. This included the premarital agreement with notarized initials, the equity vesting schedules, financial ledgers, bank reconciliations, email records, and real estate title documents, proving my sole ownership of the ranch. Each piece was organized logically, labeled and referenced for easy access during hearings. Ethan and I developed a cross-referenced index to connect documents with specific contractual clauses or financial assertions, streamlining our argumentation and minimizing the risk of oversight. Witness statements formed another cornerstone of our case. We prepared affidavits from my CFO, the lead accountant and company counsel, all of whom confirmed the company's equity distribution practices and Monica's lack of involvement. These statements adhered strictly to factual observations, avoiding emotional language, ensuring their credibility remained unimpeachable. We rehearsed the questioning format for these witnesses to prepare them for cross-examination, anticipating potential attempts by Monica's attorneys to discredit their testimony. Throughout this process, Ethan maintained a calm, strategic mindset, constantly revisiting the contract language to anticipate counter-arguments and identify any vulnerabilities in our case. He also verified that all documentation met evidentiary standards, ensuring admissibility without procedural challenges. This attention to legal detail gave me confidence that our defense was not only thorough but resilient. Furthermore, we established robust data security protocols. The entire document set was digitally encrypted, with backups stored in multiple secure locations. I insisted on this redundancy because I understood the stakes involved. Any loss or corruption of files could jeopardize the entire case. Ethan's team implemented rigorous access controls and audit trails, giving me peace of mind that our evidence was both protected and verifiable. Our preparations extended to possible settlement scenarios. While I aimed to defend my position firmly, Ethan advised on potential negotiation tactics that could resolve the dispute favorably without protracted litigation. We developed a matrix of settlement terms anchored in preserving my asset ownership while minimizing legal expenses, but I remained prepared to proceed to trial if necessary. This phase of building the legal and professional case underscored the value of systematic preparation and disciplined evidence management. The premarital agreement was more than just a signed contract. It functioned as a legal fortress, supported by a comprehensive portfolio of financial and operational documentation. Ethan's expertise in leveraging these elements transformed what could have been a reactive defense into a proactive and commanding strategy. As we finalized the exhibit packet and witness statements, I reflected on the importance of this methodical approach. The courtroom would not be swayed by emotional appeals or dramatic rhetoric. It would respond to concrete, verifiable facts organized into a coherent narrative. With every notarized initial, every meticulously maintained ledger, and every corroborating testimony, our case grew stronger, poising us to dismantle Monica's inflated claims and protect the professional legacy I had built with unwavering resolve. In the weeks leading up to the first hearings, Ethan and I were fully engaged in refining our legal strategy. Our primary objective was clear: to neutralize Monica's unsupported financial claims before they could gain traction in court. To that end, we filed several pre-trial motions designed to exclude any evidence or assertions she presented that lacked documentary or contractual backing. This procedural step was crucial. It prevented the court from considering inflated or fabricated valuations and ensured that the premarital agreement's enforceability would be front and center during proceedings. Presenting the premarital agreement as a binding contract was not simply a formality. It was the foundation of our entire case. Ethan meticulously prepared a motion to have the court recognize the agreement's legal weight, emphasizing the notarized initials on every page and the clear language delineating asset ownership. Our argument was straightforward but firm. These clauses were not only enforceable, but explicitly precluded Monica's claims to company equity and the ranch property. We anticipated resistance, so we supported this motion with affidavits from the notaries and legal professionals involved in drafting and witnessing the contract, underscoring its validity. Throughout this period, I maintained a professional composure that was critical to our approach. Divorce litigation, especially with high net worth assets involved, often devolves into emotional confrontations and heated exchanges. I made a conscious effort to remain focused on facts and processes rather than reacting to provocations. When Monica's legal team attempted to bait me into responding to sensational allegations or inflammatory statements, I refrained from engaging. Instead, I directed all communication through Ethan, ensuring that my responses were carefully crafted, legally precise, and devoid of personal emotion. The courtroom atmosphere was tense as the hearing date approached. Monica projected confidence, buoyed by her lawyer's aggressive tactics. They attempted to introduce last-minute claims and submitted documents they asserted would demonstrate her involvement and entitlement. However, we were prepared. Ethan promptly filed motions challenging the admissibility of these new exhibits, citing discovery deadlines and lack of substantiation. Our arguments highlighted procedural irregularities and factual inconsistencies, reinforcing the narrative that Monica's claims were opportunistic rather than legitimate. Simultaneously, I took proactive measures beyond the courtroom to protect the assets under dispute. Ethan advised me to secure alternative housing arrangements to avoid any risk of forced liquidation of jointly held residences or property during the divorce. I also ensured that all financial accounts linked to Tanner Technologies and personal holdings were monitored closely, with alerts set up to flag unusual activities. This precautionary financial stewardship was essential to prevent any unilateral moves that might jeopardize my control over the assets while the court deliberated. Throughout the negotiation and pre-trial exchanges, I maintained an unwavering focus on transparency with my legal team. I reviewed every document submitted, cross-checked financial statements, and participated in strategy sessions with Ethan, where we anticipated Monica's counter-arguments. We developed detailed response frameworks, including referencing specific contract clauses, footnoted financial entries, and email communications from Monica that contradicted her claims. This preemptive groundwork was vital. The courtroom would not be a place for improvisation, but a venue where methodical preparation set the agenda. An important aspect of our strategy was to alert the presiding judge to discrepancies in Monica's financial disclosures early on. Ethan drafted a formal letter detailing omitted emails, inconsistent valuations, and unsubstantiated claims, requesting judicial scrutiny. This move was deliberate. It ensured the court remained vigilant and skeptical of Monica's assertions from the outset. By framing her submission as flawed and incomplete, we laid the groundwork for motions to exclude irrelevant or misleading evidence during hearings. The dynamic between Monica and me in court was restrained, but charged. She maintained her posture of entitlement, occasionally directing pointed looks toward me, but I remained composed, answering only through my counsel or when addressing the judge directly with clear, concise statements. My demeanor reflected confidence grounded in preparation, not confrontation. In moments when the judge sought clarifications, I provided factual, document-based responses, reinforcing my role not only as a litigant, but as a professional steward of my business and assets. As the hearing approached, Ethan and I finalized our exhibit list and witness availability. We planned to call upon financial experts and company officers to testify to the legitimacy of the premarital agreement and the accuracy of the financial ledgers. This multi-layered approach was designed to present a unified front of factual evidence, professional testimony, and contractual enforcement, leaving little room for emotional appeals or baseless assertions. Ultimately, this phase was about establishing control over narrative, evidence, and procedure. By filing motions to exclude unsupported claims, presenting the premarital contract's binding status, responding calmly to provocations, and securing asset protections, I systematically dismantled the leverage Monica sought to wield. The legal trap set by the quiet folder was taking shape. Its impact was not yet known to most in the courtroom, but I knew we were positioning ourselves for a decisive advantage. The balance of power was shifting steadily and strategically, guided by professionalism, precision, and an unwavering commitment to documented truth. The moment the judge acknowledged the folder I had handed over, the courtroom atmosphere shifted tangibly. I had anticipated this reaction. My team and I had thoroughly prepared for this pivotal juncture. The contents of that modest folder held the weight of years of methodical financial management and legal foresight. As the judge carefully reviewed the notarized premarital agreement, the equity vesting schedules, and the detailed financial statements, the courtroom buzz of speculation gave way to a measured sense of skepticism toward Monica's expansive claims. Monica's legal team, sensing the erosion of their position, requested a recess to confer privately. Shortly thereafter, they approached Ethan with a proposal for settlement talks. This was a clear signal that the strength of our documentary evidence had significantly undermined the credibility of their demands. The notion of $8.5 million plus the family ranch suddenly seemed less tenable in light of the premarital agreement's enforceability and the corroborating financial records. Throughout this process, I maintained a composed and professional demeanor, aware that any visible sign of relief or triumph might encourage Monica's counsel to regroup aggressively. Instead, I focused on the next steps, confident that our evidence had introduced serious doubt about the legitimacy of Monica's claims. Key witnesses from my team had already been prepped for testimony, and their statements were scheduled for submission to reinforce the factual narrative. Our CFO's affidavit, in particular, detailed the company's equity distribution practices, explicitly confirming that Monica had no ownership stake or operational control. The lead accountant's report further substantiated the segregation of finances, illustrating clearly that Monica neither contributed to nor had access to company funds. These expert statements were submitted alongside the physical evidence, fortifying the position that Tana Technologies' valuation and assets were rightly under my sole ownership. As the settlement talks commenced, Monica's legal team appeared markedly more cautious. Their initial aggressiveness was tempered by an evident recognition that the case was no longer a contest of rhetoric, but one of documented contractual enforcement. Their strategy shifted toward seeking a compromise, attempting to minimize losses rather than pursue full claims. This development underscored the power of meticulous preparation. Those quiet details within that folder had transformed the courtroom dynamics. Monica herself seemed visibly unsettled during the hearings. Her confident posture slightly diminished as the weight of evidence contradicted her narrative. Attempts to appeal to emotion and portray herself as a wronged partner increasingly fell flat. The judge's questions during proceedings reflected this shift, focusing more on the validity and interpretation of contractual clauses rather than the emotional context Monica's counsel tried to emphasize. The courtroom's atmosphere became more measured. Whispers of doubt circulated among observers and legal professionals alike. Monica's credibility, once bolstered by bold assertions, now faced tangible challenges from irrefutable documentation and expert corroboration. The emotional narratives she had relied upon were systematically undermined by the cold, precise facts laid out in the evidence. Throughout these exchanges, I remained deliberately neutral in expression, embodying the professional steadiness that had characterized my entire approach. I understood that the strength of my case was not in confrontation or dramatic declarations, but in the integrity and clarity of the financial and legal records. This calm presence helped reinforce the impression that my position was rooted in fact, not fabrication. The legal momentum was clearly shifting. Monica's demands seemed increasingly untenable, and her legal team's enthusiasm to continue pressing the case visibly waned. The settlement discussions indicated a growing willingness to negotiate within parameters favorable to preserving my ownership rights and financial security. At the same time, I ensured that all procedural requirements continued to be met with diligence. Documents submitted were meticulously logged, and all communications with the court and opposing counsel proceeded through Ethan's office to maintain a professional and legally sound record. I monitored the status of asset protections and financial accounts closely to prevent any unilateral actions that could jeopardize the company or property during this precarious phase. While the case had not yet reached resolution, this stage marked a critical turning point. The quiet folder, once just a collection of papers, had become a strategic instrument, casting significant doubt on Monica's claims and positioning me decisively within the legal framework. The courtroom's acknowledgement of this evidence heralded a new phase of the battle, one increasingly defined by contractual enforcement and financial veracity rather than emotional appeal. The tension in the room was replaced by an undercurrent of strategic recalibration. Monica's legal team, now aware of their compromised stance, appeared to be reassessing their approach. Meanwhile, my own legal counsel and I remained poised, ready to capitalize on the vulnerabilities exposed and press forward with systematic precision. In this delicate balance, every procedural step, every submission of evidence, and every witness statement carried weight. The narrative was no longer shaped by dramatic claims, but by documented truth. And as the courtroom entered this new phase, I remained confident that the foundation laid through years of careful planning and documentation was steering the outcome toward a justified and professional conclusion. When the judge finally delivered the ruling that the premarital agreement was indeed enforceable, it marked a pivotal moment in this case. The court's affirmation effectively dismissed Monica's $8.5 million financial claim and her demands for the family ranch. This ruling was grounded firmly in the comprehensive documentation we had presented, documents that left no room for ambiguity or reinterpretation. The agreement's clauses, the notarized initials, and the detailed financial records collectively conveyed an irrefutable legal truth. The assets in question were my separate property, protected by contract and law. The judge's decision was supported by a rigorous evidentiary standard. Our legal team had anticipated the need to prove enforceability beyond mere signature presence. Ethan meticulously demonstrated the agreement's validity through notarized pages, witness affidavits confirming that Monica signed the contract voluntarily and with full understanding, and cross-referenced it with financial ledgers that clearly delineated separate assets. The court's acceptance of this multifaceted proof underscored the strength of our preparation and the solidity of the contractual language. Monica's legal team attempted to counter the ruling with motions for reconsideration and introduced what they labeled new evidence in hopes of reopening the case. But these efforts were unsuccessful. Ethan promptly filed responses highlighting procedural improprieties and the failure of the new submissions to meet evidentiary standards. The judge, after careful review, denied their requests, emphasizing that the premarital agreement's enforceability had been conclusively established through both the documentary evidence and corroborating witness testimony. From my perspective, this legal confirmation was not merely a victory. It was the professional validation of years of strategic foresight. The premarital contract was designed as a legal fortress, anticipating the complex interplay of personal relationships and business assets. Its enforceability meant that the assets I had painstakingly built, Tanner Technologies' equity and the family ranch, were shielded from claims lacking contractual foundation. Throughout the proceedings, I maintained a posture of measured professionalism. In court, when questioned about the impact of the ruling, I stated succinctly, "My attorneys will respond accordingly," signaling to all parties that I was in command of the process and confident in the legal framework supporting my position. I avoided any personal commentary or emotional reaction, recognizing that maintaining composure reinforced the credibility of my claims and the seriousness with which I approached the case. This phase also demonstrated the critical role of thorough documentation beyond just the premarital agreement. The equity vesting schedules, bank statements, and emails, where Monica herself acknowledged her lack of ownership, supported the court's reasoning. The combined weight of these records rendered her financial claims untenable in the eyes of the law. Additionally, the ruling had systemic implications. It sent a clear message regarding the enforceability of premarital agreements in high-net-worth disputes. Ethan's firm gained recognition for their effective advocacy, and our case became a reference point for similar future proceedings. This professional acknowledgement reinforced the value of proactive legal planning and the necessity of integrating contractual protections in complex personal business arrangements. However, the legal battle was far from over. Monica's legal team, though diminished in their immediate claims, remained engaged and explored other avenues to challenge the ruling. We anticipated potential appeals or attempts to delay asset transfer. To counter these, Ethan and I prepared contingency plans, including motions to enforce the judgment and prevent any dilution or liquidation of assets during the interim. In the meantime, I continued to safeguard all financial accounts and company operations. I coordinated with the corporate counsel to ensure that Tanner Technologies' shareholder registers and property titles reflected the court's ruling without delay. We updated filings with regulatory bodies to solidify ownership status and preempt any further disputes. Despite the mounting pressure, I remained focused on the systematic, fact-based approach that had carried us this far. I monitored the procedural calendar closely, ensuring all submissions were timely and adhered strictly to legal protocols. Maintaining this discipline was essential to uphold the integrity of the case and avoid giving Monica's counsel any procedural leverage. This stage also emphasized the importance of clear communication with my team and stakeholders. I briefed key executives and investors on the ruling's implications, assuring them that the company's ownership structure remained secure and that contingency measures were underway to mitigate any operational risks. Transparency within the professional network was vital to sustain confidence and prevent misinformation. Reflecting on the courtroom dynamics during the ruling's delivery, I noted a palpable shift. The judge's demeanor was resolute, signaling firm confidence in the decision's legal basis. Monica's counsel appeared increasingly circumspect, their earlier assertiveness replaced by cautious recalibration. Monica herself maintained a reserved posture, a stark contrast to her prior confidence, underscoring the ruling's impact. The enforceability of the premarital agreement fundamentally altered the trajectory of this legal dispute. It affirmed that years of strategic planning, detailed financial management, and professional legal counsel could conclusively protect assets against overstated claims. Yet, while this ruling was a major milestone, the procedural process required continued vigilance and precise execution to ensure that the court's decision translated into actual asset security. As I prepared for the next phase, I remained acutely aware that the challenge was to maintain momentum without complacency. The legal system demands patience and resilience. Thus, I committed to a steady professional posture, continuing to collaborate closely with Ethan, refining legal strategies, and ensuring that every procedural step reinforced the court's ruling. Ultimately, this moment demonstrated how documentation, quiet, precise, and methodically maintained, can exert decisive influence over high-stakes disputes. The premarital agreement was not just a piece of paper. It was a strategic instrument that validated the separation of assets and upheld the principles of contractual law. The dismissal of Monica's claims by the court was a testament to this, underscoring the necessity of foresight and professionalism in navigating complex personal and business challenges. Monica's professional and personal fallout began to crystallize in the weeks following the judge's ruling that upheld the enforceability of the premarital agreement. The courtroom, once a stage for her assertive claims of co-ownership and partnership, now bore witness to a steady erosion of her credibility. Her legal strategy, heavily reliant on emotional appeals and unsupported assertions, faltered against the weight of documented evidence and precise contractual language. This shift didn't just affect the legal standing of her claims, it rippled outward, influencing perceptions within our shared social and professional circles. One of the most immediate consequences was the mounting financial burden she faced. Legal fees accumulated rapidly as Monica's team continued to press claims that increasingly lacked foundation. By the time the main proceedings concluded, her legal expenses had exceeded $350,000, a figure that underscored the high cost of contesting well-prepared, contract-backed defenses. In contrast, my preparation and upfront investment in thorough documentation had limited my own legal expenditures, illustrating how strategic foresight translates not only into legal protection, but financial efficiency during disputes. Beyond the courtroom, Monica's standing among acquaintances and business contacts suffered. Our social network, which included investors, tech executives, and community leaders, began to view her claims with skepticism. The narrative she presented as a co-builder of Tana Technologies lost momentum as colleagues, and mutual contacts became aware of the court's decisions and the documented facts. This erosion of professional credibility was subtle but significant. In industries like ours, reputation is a valuable currency, and the perception of overreaching or misrepresentation can hinder future opportunities. Within these circles, informal conversations began to echo the reality that Monica's role in the company had been overstated. Several investors and associates, privy to internal operations, privately expressed surprise when her claims surfaced, noting her limited involvement in strategic decisions and absence from official shareholder records. This dissonance between her courtroom assertions and the business facts further marginalized her position. It was a reminder that professional reputations are not only shaped by public declarations, but by verifiable contributions and documented responsibility. Legally, the implications extended beyond asset division. Monica's requests for spousal support, were scrutinized under the lens of her demonstrated lack of financial contribution during the marriage. The premarital agreement's detailed clauses effectively reduced her entitlement to such support, given that she had not participated in the financial build-up of Tanner Technologies or the acquisition of the ranch. The court's disposition reflected this, limiting any potential spousal maintenance and reinforcing the principle that documented financial involvement and contractual terms govern such determinations. This outcome was significant not only for protecting my assets, but also for reinforcing professional accountability in marital partnerships where business interests intertwine. It sent a clear message about the necessity of transparent financial roles and the enforcement of premarital agreements in complex asset situations. Monica's diminished claims, combined with the financial penalties she incurred, exemplified the risks of pursuing unsupported legal positions without foundational evidence. Throughout this phase, I remained focused on maintaining a professional and measured approach, understanding the broader implications beyond just the courtroom victory. Protecting the company's valuation and reputation was paramount, as was safeguarding the family ranch that had personal and historical significance. The legal resolution, while favorable, underscored the importance of ongoing vigilance to ensure all rulings were properly executed and assets remained secure. I coordinated closely with Ethan and our corporate counsel to confirm that all property titles and equity registrations reflected the court's decisions promptly. Regulatory filings were updated to affirm exclusive ownership under my name, preventing any potential challenges or encumbrances. We also implemented monitoring protocols for financial accounts and company records to detect and deter any unauthorized claims or transactions moving forward. Monica's professional and personal setbacks served as a stark illustration of how critical comprehensive documentation and contractual clarity are in protecting one's business interests. The premarital agreement, combined with meticulous financial records and legal expertise, formed a formidable defense that decisively countered her ambitious claims. Her loss of credibility, the heavy legal costs she bore, and the resulting reputational impact within our mutual networks highlighted the multifaceted consequences of underestimating the power of well-established legal protections. As this chapter unfolded, it became increasingly clear that the interplay between personal relationships and professional assets demands rigorous attention and foresight. For entrepreneurs and business leaders, this case underscored the imperative to not only build but also shield their enterprises through clear contracts and diligent record-keeping. The experience reinforced my commitment to these principles, recognizing that such measures are essential, not just in theory, but in the practical safeguarding of legacy and livelihood. While Monica's position weakened considerably, the legal process required continued diligence to finalize terms and prevent any residual challenges. The court's favorable disposition toward me marked a turning point, but the ongoing management of the divorce's professional and financial ramifications remained vital. With a focus on precise execution and unwavering adherence to contractual and legal frameworks, I continued to protect Tanner Technologies' equity and the family ranch, ensuring that the years of strategic planning were not undone by subsequent disputes or procedural oversights. In sum, the fallout Monica faced was a direct consequence of her failure to recognize the strength and enforceability of the premarital agreement and the comprehensive documentation supporting asset ownership. Her loss of credibility in court, the substantial legal costs incurred, and the damage to her professional reputation within our networks collectively demonstrated the profound impact that careful legal preparation and financial transparency can have in navigating complex divorce proceedings involving significant business assets. When the final court judgment was delivered, it decisively affirmed my exclusive ownership of Tanner Technologies' equity and the family ranch. The judge's ruling dismissed Monica's $8.5 million financial claims in their entirety, as well as her demands for the ranch property. This outcome was not incidental. It was the direct result of a comprehensive legal and professional strategy grounded in meticulous documentation and enforceable contractual protections. The court recognized the premarital agreement's binding nature, underscored by the notarized initials and clear clauses we had methodically prepared and presented. This ruling validated years of strategic foresight in safeguarding both personal and professional assets. One of the essential elements contributing to this decisive judgment was the evidentiary standard we met. Under Ethan Caldwell's counsel, we ensured that every piece of documentation complied fully with legal admissibility requirements. The premarital agreement pages, each initialed and notarized, were supported by affidavits from notaries and witnesses, establishing its authenticity beyond question. The court's acceptance of these documents was reinforced by corroborating financial statements, equity vesting schedules, and email correspondences where Monica herself acknowledged her non-ownership status. This multi-layered proof eliminated ambiguity and anchored the decision firmly in documented truth. Monica's legal team attempted to counter the ruling through motions for reconsideration and by submitting new evidence intended to reopen the case. However, these efforts were met with swift and precise responses from Ethan's office. We filed detailed legal briefs highlighting procedural deficiencies and the failure of the new evidence to meet proper standards. The judge, after careful scrutiny, denied these motions, emphasizing that the premarital agreement's enforceability and our documentary evidence had been conclusively established. This judicial reinforcement further solidified the judgment and closed off avenues for immediate appeal or delay. From a professional standpoint, this ruling was more than a legal victory. It was a confirmation of the strategic rigor and disciplined foresight that had defined my role as CEO and business steward. The premarital contract, often seen as a formality by many, served as a formidable legal barricade protecting the company's equity and real estate assets from unwarranted claims. It underscored the importance of proactive legal planning in personal and business intersections, especially when significant wealth and intellectual property are involved. At the court's conclusion, when questioned about the impact of the judgment, I maintained a measured and professional demeanor, stating simply, "My attorneys will respond accordingly." This response signaled control over the proceedings without inviting further public speculation or emotional entanglement. Maintaining this composure throughout the trial reinforced the credibility of the case and underscored a commitment to professional integrity and adherence to due process. Beyond the premarital agreement, the comprehensive portfolio of documentation played a pivotal role in shaping the judgment. The equity vesting schedules meticulously detailed the shareholders and their allocations. Notably absent was any record of Monica's involvement or entitlement. The bank statements and financial ledgers substantiated the separation of assets, showing no commingling of company revenues with marital funds. Email correspondences, particularly those where Monica conceded her lack of ownership interest, further eroded her financial claims. Collectively, these records illustrated a coherent and verifiable narrative that the court was compelled to acknowledge. The judgment also had broader industry implications. Ethan Caldwell's firm gained recognition for their effective advocacy in high-net-worth divorce cases, with this matter cited as a precedent in subsequent legal discussions related to premarital agreements and asset protection strategies. The case highlighted for business leaders and legal professionals alike the critical necessity of constructing airtight contracts and maintaining rigorous financial records to navigate complex personal disputes without jeopardizing enterprise value. Although the judgment represented a significant milestone, the procedural dimension of the case required ongoing attention. Monica's legal team, while constrained, remained engaged and prepared to explore appeals or tactical delays. Anticipating these possibilities, Ethan and I developed contingency plans, including motions to enforce the court's decision and prevent any unauthorized asset dispersals during the interim. We coordinated closely with corporate counsel to update property titles and shareholder registries promptly, ensuring official records reflected the court's ruling without ambiguity or delay. Throughout this phase, I maintained vigilant oversight of Tana Technologies' financial accounts and operational protocols. Monitoring continued for any irregular activities that might attempt to undermine asset security. I also briefed key stakeholders, including investors, board members, and senior executives, to communicate the ruling's implications clearly and reinforce confidence in the company's ownership stability. Transparency within these professional networks was essential to mitigate any misinformation and preserve operational continuity. Reflecting on the courtroom dynamics during the ruling's delivery, the judge's firm and deliberate tone conveyed resolute confidence in the legal basis underpinning the decision. Monica's counsel appeared noticeably circumspect, their earlier assertiveness tempered by the weight of the evidence and the court's endorsement. Monica herself displayed a subdued demeanor, a stark contrast to the confident posture she had maintained at the outset. This shift highlighted the tangible impact of the legal process and the professional strength of the evidence presented. This phase of legal finalization underscored an important lesson. In disputes where personal relationships intersect with significant business interests, the value of strategic documentation and contractual clarity cannot be overstated. The premarital agreement was far more than a preventative measure. It was an active instrument that decisively influenced the disposition of complex asset claims. It highlighted how deliberate legal architecture is vital to preserving both professional legacy and personal security amidst challenging circumstances. While this ruling marked a critical advancement, I remained acutely aware that the journey toward complete asset protection involved continued diligence. The legal system's inherent complexities mean that enforcement and compliance require sustained attention. Partnering with Ethan and our corporate counsel, I committed to rigorous follow-through, ensuring that each procedural step, from regulatory filings to property registrations, adhered strictly to the court's directive. This persistent professionalism serves to safeguard against any subsequent attempts to erode the judgment's effect. In summary, the final court judgment was a testament to the power of professional preparation, contract enforcement, and detailed financial stewardship. Monica's substantial claims were rendered legally untenable through a combination of strategic foresight and unwavering commitment to documented truth. This phase of the case reinforced the critical importance of methodical asset protection practices for entrepreneurs and executives facing multifaceted personal and business challenges. It also strengthened the broader understanding within the industry that sound legal frameworks and disciplined record-keeping are indispensable tools in defending professional achievements amid personal adversities. Today, I lead Tana Technologies with renewed focus and a strengthened sense of purpose. Following the divorce proceedings, the company's valuation has increased to approximately $30 million, reflecting both organic growth and strategic initiatives launched in recent months. This 20% rise since the dispute not only validates the robustness of our business model, but also underscores the importance of maintaining clear leadership and unambiguous ownership. Concurrently, I secured a 25% salary increase, a tangible recognition of my role in steering the company through both operational challenges and complex legal terrain. This adjustment was carefully negotiated with the board, based on performance metrics and future growth projections, ensuring alignment with shareholder interests and long-term sustainability. The family ranch, which Monica had contested, remains firmly under my name as an asset separate from the company. This property has always been more than just land. It carries personal history and serves as a strategic retreat that supports both my personal well-being and professional creativity. Maintaining clear title to the ranch required coordinated effort among legal counsel, real estate agents, and corporate officers to ensure that all deeds and property records registered with county authorities reflected the court's ruling promptly and without ambiguity. We also implemented monitoring protocols to safeguard against any unauthorized claims or liens on the property going forward. Reflecting on the entire process, I am reminded of the quiet folder that played a pivotal role in preserving my professional and personal legacy. Those 3 notarized initials on the premarital agreement pages were more than ink and paper. They represented foresight, discipline, and a commitment to legal clarity made years before conflict emerged. The folder embodied the principle that in high-stakes situations, especially those blending personal relationships and business interests, meticulous documentation is not merely a bureaucratic exercise, it is a strategic imperative. Each ledger entry, contract clause, and email record contributed to an unassailable defense of what I had built. This experience reinforced a profound professional lesson. Strategic patience and calm professionalism often weigh more heavily in courtrooms and boardrooms than emotional appeals or dramatic confrontations. Throughout the proceedings, I consciously prioritized measured communication and factual precision, which bolstered my credibility and underscored the seriousness of my claims. This posture allowed me to maintain control over the narrative and ensured that the court's focus remained on evidence rather than emotive rhetoric. Moreover, the case affirmed the critical role of preventive legal measures in entrepreneurship. The premarital agreement was drafted not out of mistrust, but as a prudent safeguard recognizing the complexities of intertwining personal and business lives. Its enforceability reaffirmed that such contracts, when carefully constructed and properly notarized, can effectively delineate asset boundaries and mitigate risks of protracted litigation. This insight has deepened my appreciation for the value of integrating legal foresight into all stages of business development and personal planning. As I move forward, my leadership at Tanner Technologies is informed by this hard-earned understanding. I continue to champion transparency, systematic record-keeping, and proactive legal oversight within the company. These principles have become embedded in our corporate culture, guiding decision-making and risk management. I have expanded our internal compliance teams to regularly audit financial practices and contract enforcement, ensuring that future challenges will be met with the same rigor that protected us during the divorce proceedings. Personally, the resolution of this chapter has enabled me to recalibrate my work-life balance. Retaining the ranch provides a stable personal base that supports my well-being, which in turn fuels professional productivity. I've also engaged with mentors and legal advisors to explore additional asset protection strategies tailored to the evolving needs of Tanner Technologies and my family, recognizing that vigilance is an ongoing responsibility rather than a one-time achievement. Ultimately, the lessons from this experience underpin my approach to future challenges, both personal and professional. In an environment where stakes are high and relationships complex, the fusion of strategic documentation, contractual clarity, and professional composure can decisively influence outcomes. The quiet folder that once seemed an unassuming collection of papers now stands as a symbol of resilience and foresight, a testament to the power of preparation in securing justice without unnecessary confrontation.